What happened?
It's the same thing that always happens.
The Fallout show dropped a bomb on Shady Sands and over 10 years of established lore. Or did they? That's today's topic.
In the ruins of a broken city, we still dream of the Nuka-Cola Lounge.
Is the lore broken? Does Todd Howard hate Fallout New Vegas? They just want to steamroll over all of that and get rid of it because it was made by that other little company called Obsidian and all of that. But did the Fallout show break the lore? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode. We're especially going to talk about what was going on with Shady Sands, because there's a lot of controversy about that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nuka-Cola Lounge Podcast. My name is Ash. I'm here with Obsidian. As always, we're going to talk... This is the show where we talk all things Fallout. And welcome again to our sort of what do they call it? When they reboot. The reboot of the Nuka-Cola Lounge Podcast. Is the lore busted? Well, let's start by talking about what was Shady Sands anyway. Obviously it was a city or a town of some kind. In the Fallout show, it gets nuked. By the way, spoilers. Major spoilers. And just assume spoilers from here on out if you're listening to episodes of this show. So Shady Sands gets nuked at some point before the show starts. In fact, one of the main characters, Maximus, was there when it happened. And then, we learn why it happened and what happened. But there's one point in the show where our main character, Lucy McLean, is exploring a nearby vault that's close to Shady Sands, and comes across this blackboard of the history that they're teaching the kids about what happened. And it says Shady Sands. The fall of Shady Sands is in 2277, and then there's an arrow carrying on from that shows a big mushroom cloud. And some have interpreted this to mean that 2277 was when Shady Sands was nuked. The problem with that is that would be before the events of Fallout New Vegas, and that just completely is a contradiction in the lore. If that's true, was that really what happened though? Well, we're going to talk about that and explain basically why that's actually that isn't a lore contradiction. Not to claim that there aren't necessarily any lore contradiction. Like, obviously, I think with an IP this big, I'm sure the games contradict each other sometimes. So when you have this much lore in a fictional world, sometimes you're gonna miss something, and something's gonna slip through that's a contradiction, and we just kind of accept it. This would be a big one though, and so we had lots of people saying, this is they want to erase Fallout New Vegas or things like that, and then others were saying, well, at first, my question going in to the show was, is this continuous from the game lore, or is it its own universe? We know now that it is continuous from the game lore. The game events are canon. Of course, then that leads to a question of, which endings are canon, or in cases where the player has a choice that drastically changes something, which events are canon. And we're going to discuss that in a future episode of the Nuka-Cola Lounge, but right now we're going to talk about Shady Sands. My first question for you, Saib, because I'm not as deep in the lore as you, and I've just started playing New Vegas, and it's been forever since I played Fallout 1 and or 2. What was Shady Sands?
Shady Sands was the developed city of the survivors from Vault 15. So Vault 15 was right over near Vault 13, and they suffered, they were one of the experimental vaults in which they put a whole bunch of people from different cultural backgrounds that were typically very hostile to each other into the same vault and locked it up and said, good luck, to see what would happen. And what ended up happening was that they managed to get things under control, and they had a decent vault until an earthquake broke the vault and the majority of the population had to escape and get away from the vault. So that is how those people then went out. They found a site. They used a GEC to help them establish a farming community, and they created a small city that is one of the first cities that the player from Fallout 1 encounters in their exploration. There were some split off of people from that vault who took a bunch of weapons and became raiders and kidnapped Tandy, a character, a person from the Shady Sands, and she was the daughter of the leader there, and they ended up killing the raiders, and that was what got her back to her people. And crossing paths with the vault dweller basically made her think of bigger things. So she ended up establishing the New California Republic based out of Shady Sands. It is a very, very important part of the lore. It is in Fallout 1 and 2, and the characters from Fallout 1 and 2 are there. You talk to Tandy in both versions, and she sends you on missions and stuff like that in the second one. And it is a very, very, very important part of the lore. And it's what ended up really catapulting their society and creating essentially the New California Republic. And the inspiration for that comes from the first Vault Dweller and a little bit of the second Vault Dweller, which is 80 years later.
Right. And the New California Republic is obviously a massively important part of Fallout lore. Massive faction that was a government, basically, in the California region, which is where the Fallout TV show is set. And it also, extended to where the Fallout New Vegas is set. And I'm not too far through the game because I spent my first several hours just adding mods so that to just make it look a little nicer. But I have encountered a few. I have gotten far enough to encounter the New California Republic, so it's a big deal. So what was the controversy then? So actually there were two things. So there was the issue of when was Shady Sands nuked? Does that conflict?
That's the big one. The second one is its location.
The location. And also you had said to me at one point that the New California Republic seems to have, you had an issue with the population number of Shady Sands. You were saying it should have been much, much bigger, or that the
Shady Sands was the first capital. They were at 3,000 people in the second game. The New California Republic as a whole was well over millions of people by the time that New Vegas happened. So it's a little weird, but this is one of these things where it's a little bit of consternation. Is the cities in a post-apocalyptic world very much set in the ancient ruins of the previous cities in the Boneyard, essentially, in this particular case? Would the cities be as big as current day cities? And the answer to that is probably no. But even considering that, it's hard to believe that the majority of the population in the capital was under 40,000 for an organization and a government that was growing well north of millions of people.
Yes.
So that's kind of the thing where they run into some stuff. This is the NCR that waged a full-on war with Caesar's Legion. Caesar's Legion had millions and millions of people in it, so it's kind of hard to say, oh yeah, a little tiny city of 30,000 people were fighting a war with 5 million people.
Well, here's a question though, because
no.
because it does in the show, we see the Welcome to Shady Sands sign that says population 34,852. Now that's very specific. I guess the question we could ask is like, at what point was that sign put up? And
yes, and so that is part of the question, part of the theory. The other theory is that Shady Sands was the name of this city, which was based off of the other more original Shady Sands, which is
okay.
That's kind of that's a bit of a stretch. That is a bit of a stretch. Basically, looking at what we have for the lore in the other aspects of what we have in the TV show that doesn't seem to be actual, and then also based off of the conversation that the showrunners and the director had, also seems to be that they're not talking about a second Shady Sands. They're talking about, a different location. There's something to be said about whether the capital had moved and whether this had become a sort of like a college town, in a sense of like yes, it's a very pretty nice town, but just due to the issues that they had with population growth and expansion, it just was a smaller, it had stayed small while another city had become quite large and had taken over that aspect. And we know that from capitals in states and provinces all around the globe, where your capital is the first city that gets built or becomes one of these core cities, but then after some time and after a bunch of events, that is no longer where the mass population is. It's actually in a different city, in a different location, and then sometimes they move the capital after that, and the original capital is just kind of this sleepy, tiny little town, and actual other cities that have grown up are completely new. Like, we have this all over where we live, where there'll be a town that's 170 years old, and there is approximately 5 new buildings since the original founding of the build. The population really hasn't changed in 150 years. But you go over to a new city that wasn't even there, it was like some dinky little trading post, and suddenly it's got 4 million people in it today. So there are times where that happens, and that most certainly could have been what happened here, which leaves the actual NCR, or the remnants of the NCR, if they broke up, leaves the masses of those populations in other places, which again, that could be an explanation, but that is an explanation that you don't typically find happening in stories, in narratives, because while it's a true thing that happens all the time in real life, it is not something that happens typically without being like clearly denounced and tracked properly by the characters within the story retelling the narrative, because it's just like King's Landing is just that important. Cair Paravel is also very important. Did it move? Did it change? Yes, all of those things are true, but the narrative was built around that as an actual event that ended up affecting the main characters within the story, and so on and so forth. It's like there's tons of examples of where, yes, this fits, this makes sense, this works, we can engage with this story and understand what's going on here. This seemed to be handled less than perfectly and didn't seem to make sense in where they were wanting to go.
We talked in the previous episode of the Nuka-Cola Lounge about budget restrictions, and I wonder if some of that played into not being able to show
100%.
the full extent of what the New California Republic would have been, or what Shady Sands would have been. So that might be part of it. But anyway, that's kind of the surrounding background information. So let's talk about the fall of Shady Sands and what that even means. And we will, by the way, you have some other lore stuff you want to discuss as well, right? After that, we'll get to that at the end. But what is the fall of Shady Sands? So we're clearly shown in the show, at least this is what they're teaching to their children in Vault 4. This is where, when when Lucy and Maximus fall into Vault 4, and they think something is happening, and turns out something else is happening. But she walks around the school room there and looks at their timeline, and it's like 2142, Shady Sands founded, 2189, New California Republic created, 2198, Shady Sands becomes the capital of the NCR, 2241, NCR becomes the largest economic and political power in California, and then 2277, the fall of Shady Sands. Then there's an arrow extending out from that points to a mushroom cloud, like I mentioned earlier, and we had previously already seen where Shady Sands got nuked. Like, we saw the crater, in the previous episode, I believe. And that's where Maximus is from. And so a lot of immediately, and I made this assumption too, and I didn't realize it was an issue at that point, because like I said, I've just started into New Vegas, and I don't have the same lore knowledge that Obsidian has, but the fall of Shady Sands, 2277, I assumed that's when it got nuked, and I think that's the assumption that a lot of people have made. But
this is an incorrect assumption off of just based off of the artwork provided. This is an incorrect assumption. The artwork provided showcases box, timeline, event, arrow.
Yeah.
To the next event. Box, and indicating time, era, event, arrow, next event. That is different from the time. We don't have any boxes that are parallel that happen in the same time. And you follow this process 1, 2, 3, 4. You go through, and then you get to the fall of Shady Sands. What was the fall of Shady Sands? Well, that happened very clearly, was happening at the same time and before the events of Fallout New Vegas. And it is one of the primary reasons for the expansion of the NCR into Nevada, is because they were growing so big and the demands of the people were becoming so constant that they needed things like more power, more land, more farms, more food, more people. They needed all this stuff to continue their expansion as a city, as a state, as a new government in the region. They needed to have all of this stuff given to them, and in New Vegas they go out and they take it, and they go to New Vegas and they take the power generating abilities, because the place, the dam still generates a large amount of power, free power that you don't have to do very much to anything to do with. And that is a core part of the story of what's happening at this current point.
So you're saying not only is this not contradicting previous lore, it actually fits very well.
Yes, the fall of the soldiers talk about it. They talk about how there's issues going on back home. There's problems going on back home. There are major events happening, and there's consternation, and there's political backstabbing, and there's all kinds of stuff. And the story of New Vegas happens around 2281, and all of the stuff that is currently going on at that point. And that only puts it at between 4-ish years to maybe between 4 and 6, essentially, to push it between the nuking of Shady Sands to happen in and around that after 2077 time period. And I can't believe how many people who are supposedly huge fans of New Vegas who don't remember that one of the possible canon endings is that you nuke Shady Sands.
Huh.
I mean, like, I was listening to some people who were so angry they were basically spitting, and just venom like coming out of their mouth. They're foaming at the mouth, just so angry that how dare you not respect the lore of the... And the assumption is that apparently the thing that happened with Shady Sands and the NCR was the ultimately the best thing that you could do for them in the game of New Vegas. That whilst playing New Vegas, you did nothing nothing but favor the New California Republic. In everything that you did, you went out of your way to make sure that they got the best of absolutely everything. And in the final confrontation between you and the other courier, is that you chose to attack the enemies of the NCR and that you didn't attack the NCR itself, which was the actual primary ending option that was there. And so clearly these people getting so upset, I think they're getting upset because they have been dealing with a corrupt Hollywood for so long. They have been dealing with a corrupt game institutions of all these publishers that are corrupt, that aren't looking for aren't looking towards holding sacred game lore and stories, and you get all these dips who come in from outside and say, oh yes, I'm going to rewrite what my perception of this is. And then again, this is something that Hollywood's been doing forever. Ever watch Batman Forever? God, that was terrible.
Yeah. Well,
so people are forgetting that the canon ending at exactly in and around 81 to 82 was that the NCR gets nuked. And what do we find in the story? Well, we find in the story that the city was nuked in around 81 to 82. Because forgive me if again people don't understand how time works, but the idea that that Lucy's mother could leave the vault in 77 due to a plague that's happening inside, and the fact that people couldn't work and the crops weren't getting planted and people started to starve to death. What did they need? They needed to find a new source of food. Well, they got to leave the vault. So they left the vault. They went looking for food. And apparently, and again, the minds of people who are just so angry that they're literally foaming at the mouth, that her mother left the vault with her kids, found a new source of food, established a connection and a trade with the vault, which is something that happens in multiple games, who then falls in love with somebody, decides to stay there, and then establishes a life. The kids start to develop memories and time of being in the city, and they help the city to build and progress. And all of that happens in a single time period. It's no, that's describing events that happened over the course of at least a few years. So if they left the vault in November-ish of 2077, they go out, they start exploring, they scrounging for supplies, sending that back. Then in the 78, 79, she finds this city and she finds these people and she falls in love with this other woman, and she gets in a fight with her husband about what has Vault Tech actually been doing all this time, and why did discovering all these bad experiments that happened in previous vaults. She goes back, she gets the kids, goes back to the town. Then he shows up in 81, and he's like, well, this is a mess. He actually and then he takes the kids back, and then he goes back, and maybe there's some connection between him and the courier, not the primary character but the secondary courier from New Vegas. And when the time comes in the game ending, why did he send this guy to get revenge on the New California Republic? Because he wanted to, because both he, Lucy's father, and the main antagonist in the form of the second courier from the New Vegas game, decide to nuke New California Republic to get their revenge on two different things at the same time. There's nothing wrong with this timeline, and some very intelligent person on YouTube said that, well, the only person who we know for sure who her age is Birdie from Vault 4, and clearly she is in her late 30s. So that means that it was done in the 77. And it's like, well, first of all, no, the canon behind the scenes info puts her at 26. So that means that she's pretty young, but she looks old. Well, that's because the actress playing the character has a habit of playing much younger people than what her age currently actually is, which I don't know if you know this, Ash, but did you know that people in Hollywood typically portray and act and take roles of much younger people than they are?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but did you remember that atrocity that was Glee? I hated that show with a passion. Did you know that none of the actresses and actors in that show were actually high school students, and that most of them were actually far closer to their 30s than they were to their 20s? Did you know that? Isn't that insulting? Oh my goodness!
The only case I know of where a teenage character on a show like that was actually played by a teenager is Jackie on that 70s show. The actor was actually 15 or 16 when she got awarded the role.
And she lied to get that role.
But then it caused some issues with scenes between her and Ashton Kutcher, because they were supposed to be love interest. But anyway, yes, no, you're right. I mean, she could just be a late 20-year-old who just got the short end of the stick genetically,
Casting is never casting is not always perfect, obviously, but the timeline is set here. And again, I'm not defending. In the previous show I talked a lot about how I think the show was good, not great, that they missed the opportunity to do a bunch of things, and there is for sure some like retconning of where exactly Shady Sands was. And there was some difficulty with like placing it.
Well, explain that a bit. Where's the contradiction there?
So Shady Sands is supposed to be up near Vault 13 and Vault 14, way further north.
Okay.
Than where it's currently located. That again, not specifically because it's not actually stated. This is exactly where they are right here at this very exact piece of time, and this sign is clearly pointing at a sign that is the crater that is this particular city. And maybe it's not, maybe it is, but we don't actually have that as a confirmation. But as it is kind of like set up, it appears as if Shady Sands is not in the northern part of California, but is in fact in the middle of the Boneyard, which is way south, and also smack dab in the middle of the master from the first game's territory when he started to take over the area, and also where he ended up capturing a lot of the vaults in those areas. So that is a big piece that is kind of like clearly somebody forgot about the master. Clearly somebody forgot about how Fallout 1 worked. And all of the travel and the stuff like that, and the mapping and how it worked there. And then the Boneyard itself is kind of like, what happened to the Boneyard. And I do have some thoughts on that, because I think the answer is different than what some people are drawing a lot of. They're jumping at a lot of things that aren't true. So yeah, this is with the whole NCR thing, the location of Shady Sands. Yes, Sands is located in a place that it shouldn't necessarily be located in, but we don't know if there is something extra that's going on there. Right now, I'm just chalking it up to a mistake from the director, because he, not a highly detail-oriented person. And again, we see this in so many shows where it's like, it takes
that's
you 3
a
months
mistake that a lot of people would
from-
have missed, though. Like, I mean, we can't just blame just the director for it. But
no, I mean, I do, because we had the same thing happen in a bunch of other shows, especially in like the final season of final 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, where it's like, hey, so traveling from point A to point B takes like 6 months, and they went there, back, and there, and back again in one season. It's like, do you guys just suddenly like create trains in that weren't like what is going on? How are people traveling from and to these locations that normally took months? and that happened in the first season, where it actually took considerable amount of time to go from point A to point B. But in the last season, going from point A to point B is like that. That's a weekend, man. What's wrong with you? That's something that people could do in the afternoon. It does happen,
and it does sometimes, especially when you've got so many details to pay attention to in terms of getting this world right. Sometimes things just get missed. But can you see? Is there any way that in some strange way that maybe it actually all does make sense somehow? We just haven't seen the answer yet.
I think the destruction of Shady Sands is not 2277. I think that is.
I mean specifically about the location, though.
The location that again, I'm not 100% positive. Maybe what happened is because in the canon, one of the canon endings of New Vegas is that you attack Shady Sands and multiple other cities, and perhaps the board, showing Shady Sands with population numbers, maybe that was an advertisement in a different location saying like, hey, come to this city, it's beautiful here. And then maybe the crater that she was standing over wasn't actually that city, was a completely different city, one of several that got destroyed at that time. That's possibly how they could fit that in. Excuse me.
Yeah, it'd be kind of a roundabout way to do it, but I mean,
it is, and it's not something. Again, it's like if you have a limited budget, these kinds of mistakes happen a lot, and this is probably maybe what did happen, is that they kind of got the location wrong, but the timing seems to work out just fine. Because again, I find it so hard to believe that, she takes her daughter out and her son, and she goes to this other city and she hangs out there for like a weekend, and then her husband's like, destroy the city. It's like they're suffering from a plague, things are going wrong. He's trying to like make sure that their project, this little pet project of theirs is still ongoing, so therefore they need to like make sure that this is going the way that they need to. So he's got responsibilities that he can't really talk to her about. Then she ends up staying there. Not only that, she's fooling around with somebody else. He finds out about this. He's furious. He decides that he's going to take the kids and then he's going to nuke the city for good measure.
So
again,
that takes a lot of time. But by the way, it totally went over my head. Is this confirmed, or is this like more of like an inference that Lucy's mother was in a relationship with Moldaver? That I missed. I was trying to figure out what their connection was. And I thought they were just kind of ideologically aligned or something. But they were actually they were together.
Yeah, they were together.
Doing
the
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were together because she found this new world that had so much hope and stuff like that, and that's what I picked up from it. Like that's kind of what I had figured.
It's never explicitly stated, obviously. That's like, oh yeah, they were bumping uglies, but I definitely see now how that makes sense. But yeah, it's hinted.
Moldover Lee has a lot of hidden lore going on here. First of all, it's not quite explained how she went from pre-war to post-war 200 years later. That's not quite. I didn't see a deep coverage of exactly how that happened.
I'm assuming she was in one of those cryopods and then something, and then.
Yes, cryopods are definitely being added to the lore of Fallout very, very, very quickly, and I'm not opposed to it. I think that as long as it's intelligently written.
Well, they were there. I mean, it's established lore. I mean, it's Fallout 4. Yeah. That's how you you're in a cryopod, and you skip over several decades. So And in the world, it fits in the world of Fallout. I mean, this is a world where, you have flying saucers and things crashing in the desert. So it's definitely something that thematically fits with Fallout. But it also, and it also makes sense. I kind of love what they did with Vault-Tec in the show with the whole, let's have our executives and managers basically get frozen so they can run this company for hundreds of years into the future, and then the guy is one of those brain in a jar robots. Anyway, we're kind of getting off topic, but I really did like that aspect, and it's such campy 1950s sci-fi, but that's what it's about, right? That's what Fallout is. So, anyway. I can't even remember how we got on it. Oh, yeah, Moldaver's lore. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot more about Moldaver in future seasons, although she's dead now. I mean, she died at the end of
dead in sci-fi is not dead as in other shows.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're going to see lots of pre-war stuff.
Dead in soap operas is never dead, ever. Not even in the slightest, and that is that is a hilarious little thing that I always love poking fun at. It's like, oh, John, how are you still alive? Well, it was my long-lost identical twin brother who stepped onto the train platform and was quickly assassinated with the guy on the golf cart. You don't understand what I've been through. I've been to Belize and I've been in a coma for the last 3 years. Oh my! And it's like, oh, that kind of stuff is campy and is definitely good for mocking, but in this case, yes, we do have this situation where we have the being able to put somebody on ice and very easily, and I think that kind of stuff makes sense, and we're seeing it in other shows, the 3-body problem, too, where it's like they make good use of it in the 3-body problem, and in some of these other actually it's not just the 3-body problem. It showed up in there, but it also just showed up in Foundation as well, where these main characters are going to sleep in the cryopod, and then they're waking up once a month to make sure that their society is on track for what they need it to do, and then they go back to sleep for a month at a time. And by doing that, you spend a month in your time frame reference is years to everybody around you, and you wake up and you watch as things change, and you say, all right, now we need this here, we need that there, do that, build this, create a fleet here, do that over there, and it is that's a very fascinating thing that I've always felt that's just supernatural, like not supernatural, that it's natural to write cryo storage like that if you can, because that just makes so much sense.
It works in sci-fi, and it especially works in Fallout style sci-fi, which is retrofuturism. However, I think we've kind of derailed a little bit, so let's bring it back to talking about, are there some other lore problems with the show that people are seeing, or possible lore problems that maybe have an explanation but maybe not?
So the next one on the big list was the ghouls and drugs, and typically drugs don't work on ghouls that often, and this is incorrect. Yes, they don't work. They are drug resistant. They are not drug immune, and the point of the and again, it's like, tell me you didn't watch the show without telling me you didn't watch the show. Oh, well, the ghoul likes to do drugs, and drugs, he's drug resistant, and the fact that he's got this drug that he uses is clearly nobody read the lore on that. Well, apparently you didn't watch the show on that, because Lucy shoots up the ghoul with what's supposed to trank him, and he goes, I did. This is like
drop in the bucket. Yep.
Drop in the bucket, man. Like, in order for me to get high or get knocked out from these drugs, I've got to consume a lot of them, like amounts that would easily kill a non-ghoul just from an overload or an overdose. And again, it's like somebody was arguing that in the comments of one of these videos where there's seething hatred on the show, and he's like, don't people know that the ghouls are they're resistant to these drugs? And it's like, again, you're telling me that you didn't watch the show, that you didn't pay any attention to what was going on.
Well, which drugs is he talking about? Because we see that he needs the thing he's constantly inhaling, and the thing he tries to sell Lucy to get more.
The inhaler is new drug tech that has been on the market recently, and that drug is something that is helping to stave off feralization.
So is it ever explained in the game lore?
It is not explained in the show lore where that comes from. But this is explained in the game lore as something that people have been looking for. I mean, you did a big thing on Fallout Nuka World, Fallout 4, and there were multiple ghouls that were searching for anything that could stave off feralization. And the feralization that they depicted in that expansion for Fallout 4 was exactly the same feralization, even down to the them sitting there trying to remember their name and saying their name over and over and over again, trying to hold on to their sanity as it's slowly slipping away from them like sand through their fingers. So they're trying to hold on to it as hard as they can, desperately trying to. And this is what all of these ghouls in the past have been looking for. And going back to Fallout 3, this is where the ghouls from the necropolis are trying to come up with ways to prevent feralization. So it's clearly been set up in the lore. Now we have this time gap where it's like, yeah, now they have it. Now they're working on it. And these guys are now surviving this way. And the reaction to this is like, broken lore. It's like, how? How is it? You mean the thing that they've been searching for multiple iterations of the game, they finally found, and the ghouls are finally like, craving it, and they're doing literally anything it takes to get their hands on it so that they can stay sane?
Plus,
suddenly, like, it's like, of course,
to say that, like, if someone is drug resistant, that doesn't mean, again, that
within the confines,
it could be a particularly potent drug but is it ever explained in the game lore or previous lore why some ghouls go feral? And
no. This has always been
a mystery.
Nobody knows why. Nobody knows how. And these are doctors. These were people who were turned, in the past, who are trying desperately to figure out what is going on,
right?
How they can change, how they can prevent, how they can treat, how they can do all this. This has been a mystery from the get-go in Fallout 1. These people are desperately trying to save themselves from a fate that is worse than death, and they are trying to do it. And we have this kind of thing where it happened kind of out of the blue, but again, that's not really an issue.
Somebody found it. Somebody found the solution, and maybe we'll get an explanation. Maybe Vault-Tec was involved. Maybe Walton Goggins' school character is something to do with that. Who knows, right? But in any case, yeah. So there's the substance that he has to take to avoid going feral, and I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. The fact that he's
not a cure-all, it's a treatment, because we see another feral we see another character who is going feral, who is struggling with this, obviously, and he's been taking these meds, to try and slow it. It's not a fix. It just slows the timer. It's like if you have some liquid nitrogen and you're trying to slow a bomb timer. It's like, yeah, all you're doing is slowing down the countdown. You're not fixing the bomb. Not changing the bomb, you're just freezing the electrical timer on it so that it doesn't go off.
Well, and I think that is a fantastic addition to the ghoul character also, or a fantastic addition to, because you have this ghoul who's just complete badass. You know, takes on Brotherhood of Steel Knights and wins, basically, because he knows the weakness of the armor. But he himself has this massive weakness. I think that's important. Otherwise, you'd have an overpowered character that is those just aren't good in stories. Characters that have all the powers and none of the weaknesses. Anyway, I don't see a lore contradiction there. The fact that we don't have an answer to how it came about doesn't mean that it contradicts previous lore. Ghouls still are drug resistant. The trank drug does not work on him when she shoots him with it. So, and he probably just can't, you know, at one point we see a raider taking some kind of a drug through an inhaler. I'm guessing that, you know, if that wouldn't work on a ghoul. It wouldn't enhance their abilities in that way. All right. What else do we have on the list? What other perceived contradictions are there?
So there's a couple minor things. The Brotherhood East versus West thing. The East is not like the West. The West is not like the East. But that was kind of dealt with in Fallout. Like, that was established in Fallout Tactics, which is a game that a lot of people haven't played. It was expanded on in some of the other Fallout entries, and then really kind of showcased in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and then 4. It was kind of shown that the West branch came in, essentially took over the West branch, and was like, nope, now we do this our way, kind of thing. So yeah, okay. It's
how do we play this into how does this play into the show? Like I missed wherever this was an issue in the show, though.
It's not, again, this isn't an issue in the show. This is an issue in the people bitching about the show.
Oh, okay.
It's like, why is the East and the West working together all of a sudden like it's willy-nilly? It's like, well, because that's how they dealt with this problem. Like, do you not, again, have you watched the show? Have you not watched the show? Obviously you have not watched the show. Or even played Fallout. I'm assuming that they just haven't even played Fallout 4, let alone kept up in any way, shape, or form with the Fallout lore, because this was stuff that was brought in, talked about, showcased, and then worked with for a long time. So yeah, it's a weird thing for people to be complaining about, because it's like, again, tell me in 5 different ways that you know nothing about Fallout lore by complaining about this. And it's like, yeah, they're complaining about this because they apparently don't know the lore from... Well,
and I mean, it's one thing if you're like, you maybe forgot or you're not as into the lore and you're like, well, how does this make sense? And then you might get an answer. But if you're like, the lore's broken because this, and then, I mean, you're just asking to get smacked down on this. And I think a part of it too is that sometimes we make assumptions about things that aren't actually true, and then our assumptions get violated, so we think the whole thing's been violated, when really it's just we had the wrong assumption about something in the first place. Kind of like the whole Shady Sands thing that we talked about earlier.
And then the other issue that we have is, where is the Boneyard? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is it's everywhere. It's all around. The Boneyard was basically, it's like if you go to California right now, when you go to LA and San Diego and all those cities on the coast, it's not that there's like one city and then, hundreds of miles of green vegetation or deserts or other stuff. It's like, no. It's one city to the next city to the next city to the next city.
Yeah, they're all jammed up against each other. Yeah,
exactly. They're all sitting there, just completely submersed in each other. So it's looking at this complaint has me kind of like, okay, so Boneyard is originally Los Angeles. It's populated from the people from the Los Angeles Vault. It's all of the skeletal structures, that's why they call it the Boneyard, of the towers that didn't get, either vaporized or knocked over by the nukes, and they're just kind of become this bony thing. Now, the Boneyard is established in 2092. This is almost 200 years later. And I think the answer to where is the Boneyard is it's everywhere. It's all around them in the show. When they're walking in these jungly, foresty kind of areas, that's the Boneyard. Again, we know this from the Aztecs and the Mayans, when their cities crumbled, the forest came in and in less than 100 years buried everything so much that you could not see it. That's why when they turn on the power at the end of the season, you're seeing the whole landscape light up, because all of that infrastructure is still there. It's just been buried by the trees and stuff. And now that these people have power, again, like power in a survival scenario or in a city building scenario or a nation building scenario is so important, because if you don't have power, if you have no power, the things that you're doing to get food and stay alive are basically take up 90% of your day. And when you have power, well, suddenly you don't need to grind all that wheat into usable flour, which would normally take 6 to 7 hours of your day. Now you can just put it in a machine, and 5 seconds later, hey, it's all done. Here's some fresh flour. Go make your food. It's like this is and this is why that they're trying to get this free power thing, because with the free power, they can take any city that still has basic infrastructure. Now, the infrastructure in the Fallout universe is built really, really well, so that even if you lose half of a tower, you still have functioning, as long as you got a power source feeding that tower, you still have functional energy. And throughout the Fallout's existence, throughout all of the games, it's been made clear that there is still power lines underground that are feeding buildings. That's why when you go to a place in Fallout 4 or New Vegas or whatever, it's like, that's why they still have working electronic things there, because the power lines are still giving power, and we don't know why and or how. And a lot of that is fusion, the fusion tech, but also this new cold fusion might be that there's some places where that's a thing. There's also a lot of nuclear facilities that, they're not pumping out 100% of the power potential they can. They're pumping out like 5%, but you could still build a city around 5% power. From any major nuclear nuclear site, you 5% of power is a lot of power, and you can definitely establish a city worth a couple 100,000 people on that power. So that's how that has been kind of set up there. And again, some people, they jump to this conclusion very, very quickly. They go, this isn't what's going on, but it's like, no, this completely makes sense here. And the fact that at the end the lights go up everywhere around you, it shows that they're living in the ruins of the Boneyard, essentially. And that makes sense.
Okay, fascinating. And I imagine with an expanded budget in Season 2, we will get to see more of that.
We might see that, but I think Season 2 will take place entirely in New Vegas. I think that's...
I doubt that. I mean, you look at how much they jumped around in this season, characters starting in different locations. Now, we have had kind of all the characters converge now, and they're probably going to spend a lot of time in this. I'd be surprised if we didn't see more stuff back in... Like, she turned on this cold fusion thing. It's not like there's no way they're not going to feature any of the second season in that location, right?
Maybe not. I think that that's not the case. I think what's going to happen now is we're going to see Maximus, yeah. We're going to see Maximus become this new leader of the Brotherhood and put them back onto a correct path. I really hope that this is what happens. Like I'm pretty confident that this is how they're going to build his story arc out, because the Brotherhood have been kind of bad guys for a while now. Like not real deep bad guys, but I want to see the Brotherhood return to that noble sense of like, you know, the Knights of the Round Table going out to like help people, the Brotherhood concept that was there in Fallout 3, where it's like we're gonna stand and we're gonna fight, we're gonna save people's lives because technology is meaningless without people. And I'm hoping that this is the direction that it goes, and that what he'll do is he will take because he is from the NCR, like he grew up in the NCR, and then he saw it destroyed, and then he was adopted by the Brotherhood, and then he's got the perfect opportunity to say, all right, no, we're going to take this and we're going to rebuild. You know, immediately he orders, now that all the other leadership is gone and he's now hailed as the hero, he can say, all right, no more fighting with the NCR remnants. We're going to establish a new thing. You all come under my command, and we'll start to build things up. And then maybe they introduce somebody from the East Coast coming back and going, no, we're supposed to be, you know, all about taking dead technology. But I'm hoping that goes that direction. If you've never played Fallout Tactics had a lot of this, where they had this idea, this concept, this thing where they were building up the idea that the Brotherhood was very much in conflict, and you could pick the winner. You could become a total totalitarian, fanatical, fascist state, and you could, you could become a worse version of the Enclave than the Enclave was. That's the way you could take the Brotherhood in Fallout Tactics. You could also take the Brotherhood in the direction of being the noble knights who stand in and defend the people from mutations. Then you could also play the faction that embraces the mutations, embraces and has actual squads made up of death claws and fanatical raiders who have come under this banner and who have said, we are this new united front of the wasteland we're not going to look to somebody else to establish civilization again. We're going to establish civilization that is open to all. And all of those options are available, and more are available in Fallout Tactics. And again, a lot of people forget that that's a thing, that's a very much a concept that's been going around for ages now. So within the lore.
Right.
Yeah. So I am seeing this kind of playing out. That's what I hope to see, because I really want to see this play out.
Yes, I do feel like he's going to be a begrudging leader, though. Like he doesn't want to. He at this point at the end of the first season, he wants to leave and be with Lucy. And now she's gone off to toward. Yeah, I can say it. We're doing spoilers. She's gone off after her dad, and she's with the ghoul, and she's going after her dad, who the ghoul has told her, he's going back to his leaders, the people that are in charge. And man, I'm curious how that's going to play out. But yeah, I feel like Maximus will be, if he does do that, he'll be kind of a begrudging, reluctant leader in the Brotherhood. He even tells his friend at the end, he's like trying to say, no, I didn't kill her. But Gale, is that the character's name? Gale? Or Dane, sorry, not Gale. Where did I get Gale from? Dane is like, Hail Maximus, da 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 da. Even though he's trying to say, no, I did not. I'm not the one who killed Moldaver. Anyway, very curious to see. Like, they did a really good job setting up these characters, and now I feel like that's again my only hope. As I said in the previous episode, my biggest hope is now that they carry this momentum forward, because they did such a good job setting up these characters in the first season. Let's carry them forward with some really solid, good arcs, and hopefully some great new characters as well. Anything else you wanted to mention on that, or should we just wrap it up there?
No, I think that's good.
All right.
yeah, overall, I think the people freaking out about the lore changes, I think they are like, yes, there is a handful of stuff here and there, but it is by far not as bad as some people are assuming. And I think that we can look at that and relax a little bit and saying that, okay, no, this is like, you know, this is good enough to give us what we want, which is a foundation for more Fallout content, because that's what we all want.
All right. Absolutely. In our next edition of the Nuka-Cola Lounge, we're going to talk about who nuked first. What started the war? What's up with Vault-Tec and what we saw in the Fallout Season 1 about their plans and their fiduciary responsibility. Anyway, so stay tuned for that. That'll be out next. But definitely, subscribe to the Triple S League. And like this video if you appreciated what you heard here today. There's going to be lots more coming, plus we have tons of other great content on this channel. We have lots of game guides. We have a weekly gaming news show hosted by Obsidian, who's my co-host here, but also Max Darrett, a great friend of the channel and team member here as well. They cover all of the pertinent gaming news of each week on that show, so you can catch that right here on the Triple S League. For now, thanks for joining us in the lounge, and we will see you next time.